The smell hit me the moment I walked through the front door. Lavender body wash, mixed with something else I couldn't quite place. After 2 weeks training overseas security contractors in Detroit, my house felt foreign, like I was visiting someone else's life. I called out, dropping my duffel bag on the hardwood floor of our suburban fortress. The smart home system chirped its welcome, but my wife's voice didn't follow. The shower was running upstairs, at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. My wife, who complained about water bills and lectured me about environmental responsibility, was taking a long, hot shower when she should have been asleep, ready for her early morning meetings at the accounting firm. I'm Andrei Volkov, 41 years old, and I've built my life around noticing details other people miss. When you run a private security firm in a city where trust is a luxury most people can't afford, paranoia isn't a character flaw. It's job training. The kitchen counter told a story. 2 wine glasses in the sink, both with lipstick marks. Same shade, but one glass had been wiped cleaner than the other. A takeout container from Romano's, the expensive Italian place downtown, sat in the trash. The receipt showed 2 entrees, 2 desserts, a bottle of wine that cost more than most people spend on groceries in a week. Tanya's purse sat open on the counter, and her phone buzzed with a text message. The preview showed enough to make my blood run cold. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place, same time, see. The shower stopped running. I moved to my home office, a converted bedroom where I kept the real tools of my trade. 3 monitors, encrypted hard drives, and access to more surveillance databases than most police departments. Being married to someone in accounting had its advantages. Tanya helped me set up the financial side of the business, gave me credibility with corporate clients who wanted their security consultant to look respectable. What she didn't know was that I'd installed the same security protocols on our personal life that I used for my highest-paying clients. Every door, every window, every movement in and out of our house was logged, time-stamped, and backed up to 3 separate servers. I pulled up the access logs for our smart home system. For the past 2 weeks, while I was in Detroit, Tanya had left the house every evening at 7:30. She'd returned each night between 11 and midnight, always parking in the garage, always entering through the kitchen door. But tonight was different. Tonight, someone had been here with her. The guest parking spot in our driveway had been occupied from 8:15 to 11:10. The motion sensors showed 2 people entering through the front door, 2 people moving through the living room, 2 people going upstairs. Andre, you're home early. Tanya's voice drifted down from the bedroom, carefully casual, like she was reading lines from a script. Flight got moved up, I called back, minimizing the security windows on my computer. How was your evening? Oh, boring. Worked late, grabbed dinner, came home and crashed. I pulled up her credit card statements on my phone. No charges at Romano's, no charges anywhere today except for a cash withdrawal at 3 in the afternoon. $200, enough to pay for dinner and leave no electronic trail. My wife wasn't just cheating on me, she was being smart about it. Noof. The floorboards creaked overhead as she moved around the bedroom, probably checking her phone, maybe texting her mystery contact to let him know the husband was home. I wondered if she was scared, or if this was all just an inconvenience in her carefully planned double life. I'd built my business on the principle that everyone lies, everyone cheats, and everyone thinks they're smarter than the guy watching them. Corporate executives stealing from pension funds, politicians taking bribes, insurance companies denying legitimate claims. I'd seen it all, documented it all, and made a very comfortable living exposing the truth, but I'd never thought I'd be running surveillance on my own wife. 20 minutes later, Tanya came downstairs wearing her favorite silk pajamas and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She looked beautiful, like always, dark hair still damp from the shower, green eyes that had convinced me to marry her 8 years ago. But now I was looking at her the way I looked at targets in corporate investigations, cataloging details, searching for tells. I missed you, she said, wrapping her arms around my neck and kissing me on the cheek. Her skin smelled like lavender and guilt. Missed you too. The lie came easily. How's work been? Busy season, you know how it is. Lots of late nights, lots of stress. She moved to the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of water. How was Detroit? Educational. I watched her face for reactions, learned some new surveillance techniques. Amazing what technology can track these days. She nodded absently, scrolling through her phone. That's nice, honey. I'm exhausted, so I'm going to head to bed. You coming up? In a few minutes. Want to check emails first. After she went upstairs, I returned to my office and started making phone calls. The advantage of working in private security is that you develop relationships with people who have access to information most civilians can't get. Hotel managers, restaurant owners, private investigators, ex-cops who owe you favors. By 2 in the morning, I had a name. Colin Rivera, 38 years old, risk management consultant for a firm that specialized in corporate liability assessment. Divorced, no kids, lived in a luxury condo downtown. His credit card had been used at Romano's tonight, along with charges at the Marriott Hotel bar and a late-night purchase at a pharmacy that I didn't want to think about too hard. I also had security camera footage from the hotel lobby, showing Tanya and Colin entering together at 9:15, both of them laughing, his hand on the small of her back like he owned her. The footage was time-stamped, high definition, and absolutely damning. I sat in my office until sunrise, staring at the evidence and planning my next move. Tanya thought she was playing chess, but she didn't realize I'd been watching the board the entire time. She'd made her opening gambit, sacrificed her integrity for a few nights of excitement with a smooth-talking consultant who probably told her everything she wanted to hear about her brilliant mind and underappreciated talents. Now it was my turn to play. The next morning, Tanya left for work at 7:30, same as always, kissing me goodbye and promising to try to get home early for dinner. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner, then called my office. Mick, I need you to come over. Bring the surveillance kit and your laptop. Michael Torino had been my best friend since high school and my business partner for the past 6 years. Ex-Boston police detective, forced into early retirement after a corruption scandal that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with his captain's gambling problem. Mick was the guy you called when you needed someone who understood that sometimes the system failed good people, and sometimes good people had to work outside the system to get justice. He arrived 20 minutes later with a duffel bag full of electronic equipment and a thermos of coffee that smelled like it could dissolve paint. Let me guess, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Corporate espionage? Insurance fraud? Or did some executive's wife hire us to prove her husband's stealing from the company again? Closer to home this time. I turned my computer monitor so he could see the hotel security footage. My wife's having an affair. Mick watched the video without comment, his weathered face showing no surprise. After 23 years as a cop, very little shocked him anymore. How long? At least 2 weeks, probably longer. I've been tracking her movements, credit card usage, phone records. She's being careful, but not careful enough. What do you want to do about it? That was Mick. No judgment, no lectures about marriage counseling or working things out. Just a simple question about what came next. I want to know everything about Colin Rivera, where he works, where he lives, who his friends are, what his weaknesses are. And I want to know exactly how long this has been going on. Mick pulled out his laptop and started typing. Rivera, yeah, I remember this guy. His divorce was messy. Ex-wife accused him of emotional abuse, financial manipulation. Nothing criminal, but the court records paint a picture of a guy who likes to control women. Perfect. What else? Works for Hartman Risk Management, makes good money, lives alone in one of those glass towers downtown. No criminal record, but he's been named in 2 civil suits related to his consulting work. Clients claimed he was padding his expense reports and billing for work he didn't do. I felt a cold smile spreading across my face. So he's a cheater in business and in relationships. That's useful information. We spent the next 3 hours building a comprehensive profile of Colin Rivera and mapping out Tanya's deception. Phone records showed she'd been in contact with him for 6 months. Credit card statements revealed cash withdrawals that coincided with expensive dinners and hotel stays. The security footage from multiple locations painted a clear picture of a woman who'd been planning her affair with the same attention to detail she brought to her accounting work. Here's what I don't understand, Mick said, leaning back in his chair. Tanya's smart. She's got a good job. You guys seem solid financially. Why risk all of this for some consultant with a track record of treating women like garbage? I'd been asking myself the same question. Maybe she's bored. Maybe she thinks she can do better than a blue-collar guy who got lucky in the security business. Or maybe Colin told her what she wanted to hear about being underappreciated and deserving more. Or maybe she's just selfish and thought she wouldn't get caught. That afternoon, I drove to Tanya's office building and parked across the street. I wanted to see them together, to understand the dynamic between them. At 5:30, Colin's silver BMW pulled up to the curb, and Tanya emerged from the building like she was walking onto a movie set. She'd changed clothes since morning. The conservative business suit had been replaced with a black dress that showed more skin than she'd shown me in months. They kissed before she got in the car. Not a friendly peck, but the kind of kiss that made it clear this wasn't just about sex. This was about romance, about feeling desired, about the thrill of doing something forbidden. I followed them to a restaurant in the financial district, a place where corporate executives took clients they wanted to impress. Through the window, I watched them hold hands across the table, watched Colin lean in to whisper something that made Tanya laugh and blush like a teenager. My phone buzzed with a text from Tanya. "Working late again tonight? Don't wait up." I texted back, "No problem, love you." The response came immediately, "Love you too." Sitting in my car, watching my wife lie to me while she flirted with another man, I felt something cold and calculating settle into my chest. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was about respect, about the 8 years I'd invested in building a life with someone who could look me in the eye and lie without hesitation. Tanya thought she was smarter than me. Colin probably thought I was some working-class security guard who wouldn't know how to fight back against a sophisticated professional like him. They were both about to learn how wrong they were. I drove home and spent the evening planning. By midnight, I had a strategy that would systematically dismantle both of their lives, piece by piece, using the same methodical approach I brought to corporate investigations. The difference was that this time, it was personal. I started with Colin's professional life. A few phone calls to contacts in the corporate world revealed that Hartman Risk Management had been struggling financially. Several high-profile clients had dropped them after questions arose about billing practices and the accuracy of their risk assessments. Colin Rivera was a weak link in a company that couldn't afford any more bad publicity. I crafted an anonymous email to Hartman's senior partners, attaching documentation of Colin's expense account irregularities and copies of court records from his divorce proceedings. The email was professional, factual, and devastating. "I thought you should be aware that one of your senior consultants has a pattern of financial irregularities and personal conduct issues that could expose your firm to significant liability. Given your company's recent legal challenges, you may want to review Mr. Rivera's client interactions and expense reports more carefully." I sent the email from an untraceable account at 6 in the morning, timed to arrive just as the partners were reviewing their daily briefings. By noon, Colin had been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Tanya called me at 2 in the afternoon, her voice tight with stress. "Andre, something weird happened at work today. Colin Rivera, that consultant I mentioned a few times, got suspended from his job. There are rumors about financial misconduct." "That's unfortunate," I said, injecting just the right amount of casual sympathy into my voice. "Didn't you say he was working on some projects with your firm?" "A few small things, nothing major. But still, it's unsettling when someone you know professionally gets into trouble like that." Someone you know professionally. Even now, with her lover's career in ruins, she couldn't tell me the truth. "I'm sure it will work out," I said. "These corporate investigations usually blow over if there's nothing serious behind them." But there was something serious behind it, and we both knew it. Colin Rivera was about to discover that actions have consequences, and that sleeping with another man's wife was the kind of action that could destroy everything he'd built. That evening, Tanya came home early for the first time in weeks. She seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly, jumping every time it buzzed with a notification. "Everything okay?" I asked over dinner. "Fine, just work stress. You know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. Her lover was in crisis, and she couldn't talk to anyone about it, because admitting she knew Colin well enough to be concerned would expose the affair. After dinner, I excused myself to walk the dog and used the opportunity to drive past Colin's condo building. His BMW was in the parking garage, and the lights were on in his unit. I wondered if he was pacing the floor, trying to figure out who had sabotaged his career, or if he was calling lawyers to discuss his options. Either way, he was about to have bigger problems. I returned home and found Tanya on the couch, staring at her phone with an expression I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. "Bad news?" I asked, settling beside her. "Just work stuff, nothing important." She was lying again, but this time the lie came with visible effort. The easy deception of the past few months was being replaced by something more desperate. I put my arm around her shoulders and felt her tense up. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right? Whatever's bothering you, we can figure it out together. For a moment, I thought she might confess. Her eyes filled with tears, and she leaned against me like she used to when we first got married. I know, she whispered. I love you, Andre. I hope you know that. I love you too, I said, and meant it. I loved the woman I'd married, the woman I'd thought she was. But that woman might have been an illusion, and the person sitting next to me might be someone I'd never really known at all. The next morning brought news that Colin's suspension had become a termination. Hartman Risk Management had discovered irregularities in his expense reports going back 2 years, along with evidence that he'd been billing clients for work performed by junior associates while claiming credit for their analysis. Tanya took a sick day, claiming she had a migraine. She spent the morning in bed with the curtains drawn, emerging only to make hushed phone calls from the back patio, where she thought I couldn't hear her. I could hear every word. The smart home system I'd installed included audio monitoring in every room and outdoor area, a feature Tanya had agreed to because she thought it would help with security. I can't see you right now, she was saying. Things are complicated. We need to be careful. A pause, then. I don't know what happened with your job, but we can't risk being seen together until this blows over. Another pause, longer this time. Of course I care about you, but I have to think about my situation too. My husband, if he found out, you don't understand what he's capable of. Actually, she was just beginning to understand what I was capable of. That afternoon, I received a call from Leah Morrison, my head of HR and the closest thing my company had to a conscience. Leah was a former prosecutor who'd burned out on the criminal justice system and joined my firm because she believed in using investigation skills to help people rather than just punish them. Andre, we need to talk. I've been going through some irregularities in our corporate accounts, and I found something you need to see. An hour later, Leah was sitting in my office with a stack of financial documents and a grim expression. Someone's been accessing our client database and using our corporate credit account to make unauthorized purchases. Hotel rooms, restaurant charges, cash advances. The activity goes back 6 months. She slid a printout across my desk. Every charge was connected to Tanya's employee access code. My wife hadn't just been cheating on me. She'd been stealing from my company to finance her affair. The theft changed everything. What had started as a personal betrayal was now a criminal matter, and I had documentation that would hold up in any court in the country. But I wasn't ready to involve the police yet. Tanya had made this personal when she decided to steal from the company I'd built from nothing. And Colin had made it personal when he decided to pursue a married woman whose husband could destroy his life with a few phone calls. They wanted to play games with my marriage and my business. Now they were going to learn the rules of games they'd never imagined. I called Mick and asked him to meet me at Murphy's, a bar downtown that catered to cops, security contractors, and other people who understood that sometimes justice happened outside the courtroom. She's been stealing from the company, I told him, sliding the financial documents across the scarred wooden table. Using corporate funds to pay for her affair. Hotels, dinners, cash advances that went straight into her personal account. Mick studied the papers with the methodical attention he'd once brought to homicide cases. This is felony embezzlement. You could have her arrested today. I could, but that would be quick and it would be clean. She'd hire a lawyer, maybe get probation, maybe serve 6 months in minimum security. Then she'd be free to start over somewhere else, probably with Colin if he's stupid enough to wait for her. What's the alternative? I took a long drink of my beer and looked around the bar. Off-duty cops, private investigators, bail bondsmen, security contractors, all people who'd seen enough of the world to understand that sometimes the system failed, and sometimes you had to create your own justice. The alternative is that we destroy them completely. Professionally, financially, socially. We make sure that everyone they know, everyone they work with, everyone they might want to work with in the future, knows exactly what kind of people they are. Mick nodded slowly. You want to run a full exposure campaign, corporate blacklisting, social media, professional networks. I want them to understand that actions have consequences, and I want everyone who knows them to understand that cheating and stealing aren't just personal failings, they're character defects that make someone unreliable in every aspect of their life. We spent the next 2 hours planning a systematic campaign of professional and social destruction. By the time we left the bar, Colin Rivera and my wife were going to wish they'd never met each other. The first phase involved Colin's professional network. I had contacts throughout the corporate consulting world, and a few strategic phone calls ensured that word of his termination and the reasons behind it spread quickly through the industry. Within a week, every major consulting firm in the region knew that Colin Rivera was damaged goods. The second phase targeted Tanya's social circle. Her best friend Nadia worked in marketing and loved gossip more than she loved discretion. A carefully orchestrated, accidental encounter at a coffee shop near Tanya's office gave me the opportunity to mention, in confidence, that I was worried about Tanya's recent behavior and her friendship with a consultant who'd been fired for financial misconduct. Nadia's eyes lit up with the kind of predatory interest that meant the information would be all over Tanya's social network within hours. The third phase was more direct. I arranged for Tanya to discover that her corporate credit access had been suspended pending an audit of irregular charges. When she called me in a panic, I played the concerned husband perfectly. "I'm sure it's just a routine audit," I told her. "These things happen sometimes. The important thing is that we cooperate fully and provide any documentation they need." "But Andre, some of those charges, I might have used the corporate card for personal expenses a few times. Just small things, and I always intended to pay it back." "How small?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Maybe a few $100s over the past few months. Dinners when I was working late. Hotel rooms when I had to stay downtown for client meetings." She was still lying, even when caught. Even when she knew I could verify every charge and cross-reference it with her actual work schedule. "Well, we'll figure it out," I said. "The most important thing is honesty. As long as you're completely truthful about what happened, I'm sure we can work through this." That night, Tanya sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and a stack of credit card statements, trying to construct a narrative that would explain the charges without revealing the affair. I watched her from my office, using the security cameras to monitor her growing desperation. She made 3 phone calls to Colin, all of which went to voicemail. He was smart enough to know that any contact between them now would make their situation worse, but not smart enough to realize that cutting off contact would drive Tanya to make increasingly desperate decisions. At midnight, she knocked on my office door. "Andre, I need to tell you something about those corporate charges." I looked up from my computer with the expression of a man who had no idea what was coming next. "What about them?" "I made some mistakes, used the corporate card for personal expenses. I know it was wrong, and I'm prepared to pay back every penny. But I need you to know that it wasn't intentional theft. I was just careless about keeping my personal and business expenses separate." She was giving me a partial confession, hoping that admitting to carelessness would protect her from accusations of deliberate fraud. "How much are we talking about?" "Maybe $2,000 over 6 months. I know it sounds like a lot, but most of it was legitimate business expenses that I just couldn't properly document. The actual amount was closer to $8,000, and none of it was legitimate business expenses." But I nodded sympathetically and told her we'd work through it together. "The important thing is that you told me," I said. "Whatever mistakes you made, we can fix them. But I need you to promise me complete honesty from now on. No more secrets, no more careless financial decisions. Can you promise me that?" She looked me in the eye and promised complete honesty while sitting on the biggest lie of our marriage. That's when I knew our marriage was truly over and that she deserved everything that was about to happen to her. 2 weeks later, Colin Rivera was unemployable in the consulting industry and facing a lawsuit from his former employer for breach of contract and financial misconduct. Tanya's social circle had turned toxic, with friends who'd once admired her success now whispering about her suspicious behavior and her connection to a man who'd been fired for stealing. But they still didn't know I knew about the affair. I decided it was time for a direct confrontation. I followed them to their usual restaurant on a Thursday evening, waited until they were seated at their corner table, then walked in and approached them with the confidence of a man who held all the cards. "Colin Rivera," I said, extending my hand like I was greeting an old friend. "Andrei Volkov. I don't think we've been formally introduced." Colin's face went white. Tanya looked like she was about to be sick. "I'm Tanya's husband," I continued, pulling out a chair and sitting down without being invited. "I've heard so much about you." The restaurant was crowded, full of corporate executives and their clients. Exactly the kind of professional environment where a public scene would be remembered and discussed for weeks. "Andre," Tanya said, her voice barely above a whisper, "what are you doing here?" "Having dinner, same as you." I signaled the waiter and ordered a drink, then turned my attention to Colin. "So, risk management consulting. That must be interesting work." though I hear the job market's been tough lately. Colin found his voice. I think there's been some misunderstanding. Oh, I don't think so. I think I understand the situation perfectly. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table, screen up. I run a security company, Colin. Surveillance is what I do for a living. And I've been very thorough in my surveillance of this situation. Tanya's hands were shaking. Andre, please, not here. Why not here? This is where you two have been having your romantic dinners for the past 6 months. Seems appropriate. I turned back to Colin. I have to admit, I'm curious about your long-term strategy. Tanya's married. You're unemployed. And from what I understand, your divorce didn't leave you in the best financial position. What exactly did you think was going to happen? Colin started to stand up. I don't have to listen to this. Actually, you do. My voice carried just enough edge to make him sit back down. Because if you walk away from this table right now, the next conversation we have will be in front of lawyers, and it will involve criminal charges for conspiracy to commit embezzlement. The color drained from his face completely. That's right, I continued. I know about the corporate credit card. I know about the cash advances. I know about every hotel room, every dinner, every expensive bottle of wine that my wife charged to my company to finance her affair with you. Tanya was crying now, quiet tears that she was trying to hide from the other diners. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm and professional. Colin, you're going to leave this city, tonight. You're going to find a job somewhere else, preferably somewhere far away. And you're never going to contact my wife again. Because if you do, I'll make sure that every potential employer in your field knows exactly why you were fired from Hartman Risk Management. I turned to Tanya. And you're going to come home with me, and we're going to have a very long conversation about the future of our marriage and your career. Colin stood up again, this time with more conviction. You can't threaten me. I'll call the police. I laughed, a sound that made several nearby diners look in our direction. Please do. I'd love to explain to the police how you conspired with a married woman to steal money from her husband's company. I have documentation, Colin, security footage, financial records, phone logs, hotel receipts. I have enough evidence to put both of you in prison. He looked at Tanya, maybe hoping she'd stand up for him, maybe hoping she'd run away with him. But Tanya was staring at the table, crying silently, and probably calculating how much of her life was about to be destroyed. This isn't over, Colin said, though his voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is. I stood up and dropped a $20 bill on the table. Tanya, I'll be waiting in the car. You have 2 minutes to say goodbye to your friend, and then we're going home. I walked out of the restaurant knowing that everyone who'd witnessed the confrontation would be talking about it for weeks. Tanya's professional reputation was finished. Colin's was already destroyed, and their affair was now public knowledge in exactly the kind of social circle where reputation mattered more than almost anything else. 3 minutes later, Tanya got into my car without saying a word. We drove home in silence, both of us understanding that everything had changed, and that there was no going back to the life we'd built together. But I wasn't finished with either of them yet. The confrontation at the restaurant was just the beginning. Over the next month, I systematically dismantled what remained of both their lives, using every contact and every skill I'd developed in 15 years of private investigation work. Colin's attempt to find work in other cities failed when potential employers called for references and discovered the real reasons behind his termination. The lawsuit from Hartman Risk Management resulted in a judgment that wiped out his savings and forced him to sell his condo. Last I heard, he was working as a night security guard in Phoenix, a job I'm sure he got by lying about his background. Tanya's situation was more complicated because she was still my wife, but not for long. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. The evidence of embezzlement gave me leverage to negotiate a settlement that left her with almost nothing. And the publicity surrounding the case destroyed her career in accounting. But the most satisfying revenge came from an unexpected source. Nadia, Tanya's former best friend, who had been secretly jealous of Tanya's success for years. Once Nadia learned about the affair and the embezzlement, she became a one-woman publicity campaign, spreading the story through social media, professional networks, and every gossip channel in the city. Within weeks, Tanya had gone from being a respected professional to being a cautionary tale about the dangers of mixing personal desires with professional ethics. The final blow came when Tanya's former employer filed criminal charges for embezzlement. Despite her lawyer's attempts to negotiate a plea deal, she was sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to pay full restitution to my company. I attended her sentencing hearing, sitting in the back of the courtroom, as the judge explained how her actions had not only betrayed her husband's trust, but had also violated the ethical standards expected of someone in her profession. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. I saw no anger in her eyes, no defiance, just the hollow expression of someone who finally understood the full consequences of her choices. After the hearing, I drove to Murphy's bar and ordered a drink. Mick was waiting for me, along with Leah and a few other friends from the company. "How do you feel?" Leah asked. I thought about it for a moment. "Satisfied," I said finally. Justice isn't always pretty, and it's not always quick. But sometimes, if you're patient and thorough, the system actually works. "What's next for you?" I looked around the bar at the faces of people who understood that trust was the foundation of everything important in life, and that betraying that trust carried a price that couldn't be negotiated away. "Next, I go back to work," I said. "There are a lot of people out there who think they're smarter than the guy watching them, and I've gotten very good at proving them wrong." Whew! 6 months later, my company was more successful than ever. Word had spread through the corporate world about the thoroughness of my investigations and my willingness to pursue cases that other firms considered too personal or too complicated. Tanya served her full sentence and was released to a world where her professional reputation was destroyed, and her social connections had evaporated. Colin never returned to the consulting industry and, according to my sources, was working a series of low-paying jobs under an assumed name. I never remarried, but I didn't need to. I'd learned that some betrayals reveal truths about people that you can never unsee, and that sometimes the most important thing you can do is make sure those truths have consequences. The security business taught me that everyone has secrets, everyone lies, and everyone thinks they won't get caught. But it also taught me that patient, methodical investigation always reveals the truth, and that the truth, properly presented, is the most powerful weapon in the world. Tanya and Colin thought they were playing a game where the rules didn't apply to them. They discovered that the rules always apply, and that some games have consequences that last forever. I'd built my life around protecting people from threats they couldn't see coming. In